Hey guys, welcome to a very special Monday matinee. I am Brooke Underfirth, and I am here with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Kyle Olson, who are the geniuses behind Ox and Hair, which bring you the Monday matinee. And we're going to do a little bit of behind the scenes work on Revenge of the Battleaxes. So, Kyle, Ryan, welcome.
Thank you.
This is the sound of my voice.
Yeah, you don't hear us all that much.
Well, they don't hear me a lot. They hear you
that's
every
true.
episode.
They do hear me a
you
lot.
are La Voca.
I do that.
So, guys, you guys have been, I'm going to do a little bit of background. You guys have been doing
Sure.
Legible Scrawl and Ox and Hair for how long?
Ooh, let's see. I guess about 4 years. This is the second. We're wrapping up the second year of Monday Matinee, and then we did a couple things in Legible Scrawl before
We did a
that.
year of Legible Scrawl before we did Monday Matinee and Ox and Hair. Now, do you count the start of Legible Scrawl as the first Super Hulock or the second Super Hulock?
I do it from the first one, even though we didn't have the name yet.
Okay, because usually when I tell the story of how I got involved, I start with the first one. But I wasn't involved in the first one, so you can go with that.
Well, I think that's where the ball started rolling, and it was I didn't have the formalized name for it yet at the time, but it was sort of like it went so well that I was like, I have to do more of this. And
yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun. For those that don't know, the three of us met on being moderators at Phoenix Comic-Con, and a lot of the talent you hear is people that have been on the moderator team, so we all have passable voices and commanding presence.
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about this in the behind the scenes of Swashbuckling too. But yeah, it started out as we would do these sort of mock panels to train our moderators. And the moderators are the ones who, if you ever go to a convention, are the ones who are standing up at the podium and just basically making sure nothing goes off the rails. They help field questions. They help you may even get water. They help keep maybe make a shy guest feel more comfortable so they'll be answering questions. And so to train people, we had these mock panels. And so our people would pretend to be a celebrity or a fan or whatever, and maybe be over enthusiastic, or maybe they'd be really quiet. And we would, tell the person who was being the celebrity something to do, something strange to do, like, be obnoxious, be like this, and not tell the moderator what was going to happen and see how they would react. But as I was watching all these things happen, it was like, wow, there's a lot of talent in this room. These people they're being trained for moderation, but just off the cuff, they're really good and they're really performing. And so I put together our first panel as a live script read, and I took the people from there that were extremely talented and created a panel that we read a Super Hulock script, and it was a huge success. And then from then we started doing more and more things, and now here we are in Monday Matinee creating our own content as opposed to just doing fan service.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do, and I wanted to talk about the latest project, which is Revenge of the Battleaxes. And Kyle wrote it all, and Ryan directed it. And I know this because I had several notes from him during the recording session.
What? Surprising.
No, it's good. It was cool because you'd rather do it right. So I'd rather be given the opportunity to take the note and get it the way that's going to make it best to do the product justice, do the writing justice, and to make myself sound better too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking a note. So,
and you did amazingly, by the way.
Oh, well, you're kind. I mean, so I want to say, Kyle, do you want to give us a little, or either one of you, give a little synopsis of what it is in case somebody who has not listened to the show can get an idea as to what it is.
And why they should listen to the show.
And
yes.
Yeah, exactly. If you're listening to the behind the scenes episode, then I'm hoping you heard the rest of it. But if not,
well, you never know, because people drop in the weirdest moments. So
that's true. Maybe Fitz has a lot of fans out there, so maybe they're just here to hear his voice.
Well, have you seen Fitz? He's adorable.
Aw, thank you.
So we had just come off of the Swashbuckling season 2, which was a mammoth monster of a project. It's our flagship show. It's our favorite. Doing it if we have to pick favorites over children, and it's really, really big, and it got even bigger this season, and we kept adding more things and more things and more things. And so coming off the end of it, we were tired. Like, we had just done so much. So the position that sort of this is in is right after, if you go back to the first year, right after Swashbuckling, we did something called Evil Isn't Easy, which starred Brooke.
Hey!
And our friend Jess, who's also in Battleaxes here. And the position that was Fitz said, I want to do something else, but I want to do something really, really simple. Like, Swashbuckling at this point is 12 hours of editing work for you?
It's between 12 and 16, depending on how long the episode is. Because in addition to directing, I do all the sound effects.
Yeah, for 1 half-an-hour episode. So he's like, he's like, please don't kill me. Like I don't like I'm so tired. Please don't. So Evil Isn't Easy came from that. It was basically okay. How can I tell a story with two voices and minimal sound effects and still have an interesting story? So here we are again. Swashbuckling happens, and we're getting tired. I'm like, okay, so I need to do something simple. So I said, all right. So instead of doing a full audio drama, what if it's them talking about something that happened? And so I shifted the narrative and had it be them in a bar talking about the thing that happened, as opposed to doing the full story about that. Now, part of that was just the logistics of let's make it simple. But the other thing was that's interesting to me as a writer, as opposed to trying to have it be like, and then we go to this room and then we battle this thing, to move it over to have them talking about the thing that happened and to make that an interesting story. Now, the idea was to do it simple, and that didn't happen really at all. But the cool thing part about that is as this thing came together, an interesting opportunity came about. And so I'm going to hand it over to Fitz to talk about what was different about the recording of this than in any of the things we've ever done before.
So in order to kind of set the stage, I have to rewind a little bit to Phoenix Comic-Con this year, which was not Phoenix Comic-Con. Quick, what was it called?
It was PCF, Phoenix Comic Fest.
Yes. So at Phoenix Comic Fest this year, we put on a couple fan fiction script reads, as has been our habit for the last 4 years, 3 years. 4 years.
Mhm.
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years now, yeah.
And one of the mornings, I think it was Sunday morning, we were doing our last panel, and I was supposed to meet Kyle, and I got there a little bit early. I'm wandering around in the vendor hall and casually looking for one of our mutual friends, Ryan Dalton, who is a published author. He writes the Time Shift trilogy. Yes, I'll do a shout out for my friends. Brooke can do a shout out for her awesome theater, Stray Cat Theater in Phoenix. You should go see everything that they do.
I mean, you should, but okay.
But I was in the writer area, and I was kind of making my way towards where I thought Ryan might be, because I hadn't yet said hi to him. And I see a guy sitting there with a big banner behind him that says, how to be successful by a completely successful, with the word un written in front of it in red, person. And I'm like, well, Kyle's not here yet, and that's intriguing. I'm going to go talk to this guy. And so I just strike up a conversation with him. And it turns out that he has a recording studio in Phoenix. Right. So we actually, the guy's name is Joel Cunningham, who wrote How to Be a Successful Person by a Completely How to Be Successful by a Completely Unsuccessful Person by Wally, his pseudo pen name. So struck up a conversation with him. And one of the things is we've been looking for, what if we could find a place where we could actually do a recording, not virtually, not having, people send me audio that I'm then clipping together, but really get everyone in a room together, particularly for something like Swashbuckling, which was on my mind at the time, because I think we're in the middle of that. And wouldn't it be really cool if we could get that group of people together in a room to engage with each other, and what kind of cross chatter we could get, what kind of vibe could we get if we were in a room? And Kyle had done some calling around to different places, and saying, can we get a quote? What would it cost to rent a room for a day? And so we call them up and then say something like, hey, I'm looking to, or write an email, say, hey, I'm looking to, rent your audio studio, and be like, great. So how many tracks are you looking to lay down? Like, no, we're not doing, not a band. All right. So do you need backup drummers, or are you going to bring your own instruments? No, we're not a band. And I was relaying this to Joel, and he's like, hey, that's funny. That's a neat story. I've got my, production studio where I do my podcast. And I'm like, do tell me more.
Go on.
Right. And so we had an email correspondence for a couple weeks. Kyle and I went over, toured the studio, and we decided to go ahead and plop down a little bit extra money and rent out a studio and see what we could do with it. And it turned out to be really amazing, because we got 6 incredible people, and then for that last episode we got Eric Letman as well. So we got 7 incredible actors sitting together and just vibing off of each other and having this great connection as if they're a group of adventurers who have just survived a quest and are kind of a little, punch happy and really aren't sure how to handle the fact that they survived killing a god. That's a spoiler from the first episode, so I'm not spoiling the season if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and well, I mean, okay, spoilers. So Eric is not a member of the band of killers. That's what we'll call ourselves. But what I found really cool is that Jess Harris, who plays Nadira, is the stranger. Like, she's the stranger to the group. And while we know Jess, like, there's two people or three people I did not know. Well, I kind of knew Jess. I didn't know Eric, which was totally fine. And I didn't know Pavneet, who played Luxuriant Pearl, and who's delightful. But Luxuriant Pearl is kind of odd, so who really ever knows Luxuriant Pearl? But Mandy and Kara and Anastasia and I all know each other fairly well. So it was cool that the four of us had, like, it felt very natural for me to defer to Anastasia, who she does in the show as well. So, and you're right. It's like you're all vibing off each other because we all like each other, and it's fun to get together and record together.
Yeah,
So,
and when you hear the recordings, when you hear everyone laughing in the background stuff, that was all natural. Like, we didn't. That's not something that Fitz just added in post production. Like, we wanted it to have that feel, and so I said, when something's funny, when someone says something funny, laugh. Like, gasp. I mean, like, the idea is that you are all in the room, and you are literally all in the room. So react like you're living in the same space, because that's the kind of vibe we want to have. And I think you guys as actors did an excellent job of that, of like being present even when you didn't have a speaking line.
Which is, to be fair, we laughed at pretty much every single one of Kara's lines. Kara, who plays Fendi,
well,
because she's amazing.
Yeah.
That's because Fendi's funny,
right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Kyle, like, this is probably one of my favorite things you've written.
Yeah, that one thing people should know about Brooke is not only is she, one of our go-to actors and a good friend, she is also a beta reader. So she, like, whenever I have something, I like, hey, can you read this thing for me? And she'll always make time out of her schedule to read something off and give me some notes on it.
Yeah, and you had me read your adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea that's being done by TheaterWorks out in Peoria, and I'm super excited to see it because I love the adaptation.
Thank you.
I think it's smart. You're a smart writer, and I like that. And also, this will sound really weird. Kyle doesn't have to be told to write strong women; he just does it.
Right?
I mean, it's not like he has to have it be a thought. And I don't know if that's because I think it's partly who you are. I also think you kind of write with your kids in mind, don't you?
A lot of it is, yeah. I mean, I sort of, I tend to be a slow learner. Like, I sort of hit stuff really dumb, and so I came to feminism in the dumbest way possible, which is I had daughters. It's like, and maybe it could have been that I mean, I'm not going to say that I was a rampant misogynist before that, but it was still I had daughters, and I went, oh, this world is improperly balanced, and it's going to be really cruel to them. And so I want to do everything I can to try and make that difference. And it was one of those retroactive things where I looked back at my life and went, I've been surrounded by amazing, powerful, fantastic, brilliant women my entire life. Why am I such an idiot? I need to be doing something about this. So yeah, that it's same thing. Like Paul Feig talked a lot about this as well. He's like, those are the stories I'm interested in telling, and it's like men are fantastic. I love, like, all the Marvel movies, but they've had their day. Like, those aren't the stories that I'm interested in telling because I've seen them 100 times before. So this is what I'm interested in doing, because, like, this is not only is it exciting to me, but, like, I haven't seen these stories told 100,000 times.
Right, and there's a million stories to be told. It's funny because the play that we're currently doing at Stray Cat is The Antipodes by Annie Baker, and it is about telling stories. Have all the stories been told? And no, they haven't been. We still have things to think of. So, Kyle, can you kind of like talk a little bit about how did this start with you?
Well, yeah, it was a couple different pieces. I tend to like pull from what would you think be completely random things, and then and then they somehow all come together to make a new thing for me. So I've been interested in a lot of. There's a lot of in podcasting right now. There's a very popular trend of actual role playing. Like that people actually they're doing a full role playing game, they're recording it, and they're putting it out. Stuff like Critical Role are at the top, but then there's all sorts of other ones down the line. But I love that people are doing that, and I really miss my role playing days. I spent a lot of time. I worked at a gaming store for a while, so I had at one point I had 6 different games I was involved in. So every night I knew like, oh, tonight's D&D, oh, tomorrow is Vampire, Wednesday is Marvel superheroes. Like I knew and what my character was in each one of them. I miss those days, even though life has moved on. So the feeling I wanted to get was not necessarily the actual fighting, the that I strike him with my +2 sword and I hit him with a fireball. It was the table talk afterwards, because one of my favorite things was talking with my friends afterwards about what had happened. Like, you guys remember that time that we were vampires and we were fighting that werewolf and so that's the vibe I wanted to go for. So it was like the telling about what happened in your game to someone who was not there but wants to hear about it, as opposed to someone who doesn't want to hear about it. So that's where sort of Nadira came from. So I had the rough idea, like the place where the plot is going to go, but I didn't know what the plot was. And I'd always had this idea of what if in a fantasy setting, what if the gods weren't actually the gods, but sort of like carpetbaggers? They sort of celestially rolled in and just said, "Oh well, no, we made this whole thing." And then I had that idea of like wanting to do the doomed quest of like, okay, we're gonna kill the gods. And part of that came from Prince. I'm a big Prince fan. It was around the anniversary of his passing, and I was thinking a lot about that. And one of my favorite songs of all times is Prince's Seven. And so if you look at it, that is pretty much the premise of Revenge of the Battleaxes. All 7, and we'll watch them fall, stand in the way of love, and we will smoke them all. So the more you dig into it, you'll see it doesn't really line up with all the lyrics and stuff too. But that idea of like, who are the 7? Why do they have to fall? That heavily influenced it too. And much so that it also influenced the names of all the characters. So all of the battle axes themselves, they are all from Prince songs. Pearl is from Diamonds and Pearls, and Nikki is Darling Nikki. I mean, all those things all of them are from Prince songs or parts of Prince's life. I didn't want to have like one diamond and one pearl. I thought that'd be a little too obvious.
It was funny because a friend of mine, we had done a post, and there was the artwork that went with Cynthia Rose.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big jokes was, do they know that like Cynthia Rose is from Pitch Perfect? And I'm like, well, actually.
Exactly. If you take that reference a little bit farther back.
So that was like interesting to find out that everything was Prince related. And, love him or hate him, although I don't know anybody that hates Prince. You can't deny the fact that the man was a creative genius. So,
yes.
If you're going to borrow from anybody, you borrowed well. So I wanted to ask you then about the gods, because there are 7 gods. What was your origination for the gods?
So the gods was kind of a fun thing because, and this isn't a heavily deep thing that you need to get into. It's just I needed an easy way to understand someone of a higher level who had immense amounts of power and also a shtick, that something that was around them, without having to pull out the old D&D manuals and go through it, and or take like, okay, he's like Thor, but he's like Zeus, except he's like, I didn't want to do that, but I needed something that I could have a shorthand for myself, so that I could know exactly what he's like, what his atmosphere is like, how he talks, all that kind of thing. So I decided to base them on male directors. So all of the gods are actually based on really powerful movie directors. So you have the first one is the god of excess. That is based on Peter Jackson, Axo. So you just pulled part of his name out. So that's why when they're fighting him, they're fighting a giant gorilla, they're fighting giant spiders, all those things, ghosts, because those are all Peter Jackson movies.
So they're fighting a 4-hour movie where
Yes, and it lasts a really long time. Yeah, it's like there's 3 chambers, so there's like 3-hour movie. So I wasn't trying to take. I wasn't necessarily trying to take shots at all these guys because I mean I'm big fans of most of the people I'm after, so I wasn't trying to like do the thing, but I was trying to think of in a big organization who are the people at the top that are sort of monumental, that everyone knows all their stuff and almost worships them, and then that they would. That I could easily pull from, and then I could once you say Peter Jackson is the god or whatever, then the dungeon almost designs itself, and you just can go from place to place, and so each one and all those things. So I leave that to the listeners to go back through and see if they can figure out, now knowing who all they are, which directors in particular I was talking to, and it's not that difficult because I usually did some part of their name as the gods.
So how did you? This is so. I've never really asked a writer. So how'd you come up with that? That's like no. That's like when talkbacks in the theater. So how'd you learn all your lines? Like
Word
I don't
by
want to be
word.
that. I don't want to be that asshole. So it's like you've given me what your inspiration is. Well, here's the question I will ask you: is like, do you write every day? Because you write a lot.
I do write a lot. No, not every day. I wish I could. I mean, I wish I had the time for it. But there's, you ask any writer, and there's the actual putting down of words is only a small part of the writing process. So I'm always working on something. Um, I tend to write fast because I usually have it all planned out, and then I just write straight out. So I don't even tend to edit that much because I usually just trying to edit in my head. So when I have keyboard time, which I don't have a lot of, I want to make it just me putting the words in. So I don't use that time for creation. I use that time for the labor.
For dictation.
Yeah, dictation. Yeah, I guess that's the way to do it. Actually, this comes back to role playing, which is, I think, is what I learned as a dungeon master. Is a lot of times it's just getting characters that you understand and know, and then putting them in the room, and then throw something at them, and then I just sit back and watch what happens. So I keep it fairly loose in terms of like I have them start here. I know they're going to end there, and what happens in the middle is kind of where the exciting part for me is.
Oh, that's cool. Now, when you were writing this, I know that I don't want to be so vain as to say, did you write with any of us in mind?
I did. I did base the character on you. I wanted you to definitely play her. Some of the other ones I didn't, not because, but because scheduling didn't work out. But I don't want to say that anyone was second choice, because when it came down to the actual process, it was like I had a character that I needed to have a one for. And so I wanted the other one I will say that I definitely wrote for and hoped she would take the role and took, and that was Paneet. Paneet is as a new member of our group, but has already been fantastic in everything she done. I discovered her. I discovered her. No, I found her from Night of the Chicken, which is a play that Space 55 does, and which just won a bunch of Zonies.
Yes, it did. Yes,
Yeah,
it did.
well deserved. If I have my druthers, I will work my way through that entire cast because they are fantastic. And so yeah, we got her from Night of the Chicken, and so I when I was writing, I had just worked with her in Swashbuckling season 2, where she played a major role, and so I immediately when that was wrapping up, I said, I have another thing I want you to do, even before I started writing, and she's like, yeah, absolutely. So Pearl was actually designed, and knowing she would be doing that, it was a lot easier for me to write. I like to cast before I write, especially for Monday Matinee, because I want to hear you say this, and if I have you say this, what's it going to sound like? So it's the two things. So like a lot of stuff I put in Cloreen, knowing that you would have to say it, and I just kind of want to be like, oh, wait till she gets to this line. This is going to be fun.
What's cool about Paneet, who I really like a lot, is she's Indian, obviously, if you didn't know that from her name, and she has an accent.
Yes.
And I like that because that's how it's going to be when you have a bunch of people that come together.
Yeah.
We all should not sound like we are from the Midwest and we're passing the Jello. I mean, so I think one of the things I will talk about in the fact that I liked my character a lot because I felt like my character wasn't a stretch for me at all. And I think I sent you a picture once I'd read it saying, okay, here's who I'm like taking for my character inspiration. And it was Chewbacca, Balsag from The Warriors 3 in Thor, which is Ray Stevenson, for those who have never read the comic but have only watched the movies. He's the big fat one with the long hair, and who unceremoniously dies. Thanks, Hella.
Yeah. Refer
and-
to if you hey, those who are interested about our opinions on that can go listen to the Road to Infinity podcast, where I talk a lot about how badly abused the Warriors 3 were.
Oh, you should definitely talk about. You should definitely listen to the second Thor episode. Anyway, and then Crazy Eyes from Orange Is the New Black.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, she's got this.
Yeah,
like,
and then you responded back also, and you gave me Gimli from Lord of the Rings. So one of the things I did enjoy is the concept of. Are we? Yeah, we could spoil. Is how Nadira comes to play, and how did you try to make her the hammer, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, she was Chekhov's gun. So she put her she's there on the mantle in the first scene, and then all the way through. Well, I needed a neutral observer. I needed somebody that they could talk to, because the five of them know each other, and so they know what they've experienced too. So I needed somebody to be there to be like, hey, why, like what's going on, like how's wait, did you just say that? That kind of thing, to have somebody completely sort of neutral. But I didn't want to have her just be a generic character, so I knew that she needed to be eventually the sixth member. But then how is that going to happen? So I sort of worked backwards from that. Like, why would they be coming there? Why would they be talking to her? And then at the end, what would the thing be? And I had a couple things that it could have been, and then by the time I got to the end, it was like that's the nice thing about when you're writing like this, is that your brain is working on a different level. So by the time I got to it, I was like, oh, that's what it is. She's the daughter. Like, clearly, like that. Just read the earlier work. You can see it everything. But I didn't, until the last episode, I didn't know 100% for sure. But then it was just like I had been planning it without even knowing that I had been planning it. I really like to have the beginning and the end, so that I can then go back through and then make sure it all flows the right way, or cut out little things that, and there's a little bit. I mean, I also tend to, I like a little bit of mess, and so when you read or hear any of my stuff, there's always a little bit of like, I don't like to sand all the edges down. So there's a couple things in this that don't, I don't want to say don't make sense, but like that the plot lines that didn't go anywhere. There's little frayed edges and stuff too, because I didn't want it to seem perfect and smooth and nice.
The gun couldn't be the only thing on the mantle. There should be other stuff too that turns out to not be important.
Exactly. But I can think of, I think it's in episode 3. There's a whole thing about they get an obelisk.
Yep.
Or a Takenu. That means absolutely nothing. Like, it is a completely just dead plot line. I thought about having them having a mystical thing or whatever, but then I decided not to. And instead of going back and wiping it out, I was like,
that's what we think.
What are herrings for if you don't
comes around and it's like the key to some god world, and they have to go on a rampage. We just know you're laying seeds far, far in the future. This is which direction right now.
As much as it is, like that I'm doing a lot of back padding. The reason, the way you can tell that I am a terrible writer is the fact that they all survive. Like, in this story, someone should have died, and I really had full intention of killing people by the time I got to episode 6. I was like, well, blood's got to be spilled. They're not going to be able to walk away this unscathed. And I just fell in love with the Battleaxes so much that I just couldn't stand to kill any of them, because I could not imagine doing a second season, which at the time I wasn't even thinking about a second season. But if we did more, I just couldn't imagine doing it without all of them. And I sort of they were saved from the Hangman's Noose.
Well, that makes me.
That's why I'm a hack.
Do you want to do a second season?
Yes, please.
I'll say that actually it was Fitz that sort of convinced me to that, like that, to start thinking about those ways, because he was so enthusiastic about this, and also like, what happens next? Like, what happens to the other? Do they go somewhere? Do they kill more gods? Like, what's going to happen? I was like, yeah, what does happen?
So, of all the stories that we've done, this one was intended, like when Kyle first pitched this to me, this was intended to be a one-off. It was intended to be a 6-episode run. It would be a one and done kind of story. But then when I read it, I said, I can see this being the counterpoint to Swashbuckling. Because everything else that we've done has ended up being, even in the cases where maybe they could have gone a little bit farther, for whatever reason, they've ended up being one season only. And I'm thinking about two stories in particular, which were designed as multiple season, but for various reasons, just never worked out. Swashbuckling being the exception. Of course, we have season 3 already kind of churning. And then this, I was thinking, well, this is it's an engaging story. It's got some incredible people in it, and it's got all the elements that I love in A, good storytelling, but B, also what I really love that Kyle really does well. And I can see this going for multiple seasons and being a really engaging, part of our flagship set of stories. So I'm, as soon as I read it, I said, so when are we doing season 2? Because I want season 2. I mean, first we have to have the, the voyage across the sea. I think that should be a one-shot episode, right? Because Cloreen needs to have her hard-bodied women who are pulling ropes.
I mean, yes, I do.
Hey, no judgment. We like what we like.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit, like, since it's been a lot of me. I only do, like, I give you the stuff. We get the actors. We direct the stuff too, and then you.
Oh, I do stuff. What?
Yeah, have to go off in a little room by yourself for the equivalent of days and days of work. So ordinarily when we do this kind of stuff, we record everybody wherever they are. We've got actors now all over the world that we pull from. This time everybody was in the room, so you had all of the source audio at once. Like when you sat down, you had all 6 episodes there right in front of you.
It was nice.
So what was it like, difference in the process, like from having to, the swashbuckling, God bless them, that was a scramble. Here's a for all you insiders or all you fans of Monday Matinee, whenever you hear either myself or Fitz talking on any episode, that's because an actor did not come through for us.
We don't usually cast ourselves.
Aww.
We don't. We say as much I'd like to claim like I'm like Alfred Hitchcock or Quentin Tarantino. No, like whenever you hear either of our voices, it's because something happened. Someone didn't get the audio, got corrupted. We couldn't track them down. They ghosted on us. That's when that's when you hear our voices.
I will say this though. I've recorded with Kyle, and his track was a throwaway. I like recording with Kyle. No, you're fun to record opposite.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do like to perform. So I mean, like when we're doing it, I'm not just gonna oh no,
you don't phone it in. You bring it.
Yeah. So I by the time we get to the end of the swashbuckling, I've played pretty much every character, because usually when we do live recordings, I'm whoever is not there for that recording. So I've been Zinnia, I've been Saffron, I've been pretty much everybody.
So Ryan, like, what do you find to be the most challenging about cutting our stuff together?
So what's interesting, as I was listening to Kyle telling a little bit more about his writing process, and that the actual, keyboard time is the just churning it out. I actually have a similar approach when it comes to audio design. So what not a lot of people know is that I will take the script and I write in the margins how I'm going to design the sound effects to augment what's happening. And it used to be back in the day when I was first getting started, because all of us started this from, hey, we're interested in doing this and have figured this out as we went. So, none of us have professional training in the things that we're doing. And so when we did like the first season of Swashbuckling, if you go back and listen to that, there are very few sound effects. There's very little background noise in most scenes. And then I've tried to push each episode to do a little bit more. And earlier this year, Kyle had introduced me to a podcast called Joseph that is basically a movie for your ears. And in listening to what they did and having left channels and right channels and all these different things and these different elements that made it an audio experience, I said, I want to do that. But even back with first Swashbuckling, I would go through this script and I would actually decide, how do I want to design this audio to do the thing? Because You've read the scripts, being one of our amazing actors, and when Kyle puts in a sound effect, it's usually something like mystic or whiz or splat, and it's like, really, buddy, really? That's what you're gonna give me? Or bar noises. Okay.
Mhm.
All I know is now I'm gonna see you like with a pound of meat, like punching it to like get the right sound.
So I wish I was that creative, but what I actually do is I use freesound.org, which is a
Hmm.
great online website where a bunch of people have done their own Foley work and put it up for other people to use. And I always go with Creative Commons Zero for two reasons. One, because I use a lot of sound effects, and even attribution licenses would kind of be a challenge for us to maintain. But also, most licenses don't allow you to modify them. And so any given sound may be something I just found as is. So actually, for example, the sound mystic, and Kyle had that in the script in episode 5. The characters have been in another plane of existence and are kind of being zapped back into the bar, or the tavern, really. And it's Sound Mystic. And I literally found that Sound Mystic. That is an audio clip that someone put together. And I'm like, that is amazing. Mine, it's Creative Commons Zero, done. But a lot of the other stuff will be multiple sounds, put together. Or the ambient background noise, for example. I created that a loop that is a crowd noise, a cackling fire, a periodic tap filling water. You probably can't tell, but there's actually a couple dice games going on in the background. So I've got dice shaking and then rolling on the table. I've got plates sitting around, and I've actually got footsteps going left channel to right channel to left channel on a pretty much an infinite loop. So a lot of what I end up doing before I even sit down is designing those elements. And in particular with this one, I wanted to kind of a mental image of where is this back room? Where is that related to the main area versus the outside? And so I had it in my mind that you enter the bar and it's long and rectangular, and I kind of feel like you're entering in, like, if you're looking at like a long rectangle in the lower left hand corner, and that there's probably a band and the minstrel group playing in the right in front of you in the back corner. The bar is across the back wall, and then over in the back area is where all the kegs are and the actual like back room. And so a lot of what I do, for example, in the very last episode, your character, Brooke, is walking out to go grab Nadira, kind of grabs her and says, "We need to go now." If you notice, she comes from right channel to left channel. That's because in my head, I had the back rooms over on the right, Nadira's over here, more in the front area, serving people. So obviously, Cloreen's coming from over here and coming back.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I had all of that kind of worked out in my head, and then I go and I source the sounds. I find out what groups of sounds will work independently, what things will work by themselves, and then there are a lot of things that I'll read the script and I'll say, okay, if Nadira says, "I'll go get you another round of drinks," well, then she had to have sat down drinks beforehand. Or if she's saying, "Here, drink this," even though there's nothing in the script that says, "Set down, drink," I go in and do, say, okay, I want a sound effect that's set down a glass or slide it across a table so that you can hear the background and it's augmenting the fact that Nadira is serving drinks, and it sets up that relationship between the characters.
I grew up listening to a lot of old time radio. My mom was very to it, so it's what you're talking about is not unfamiliar to me. Because what it does is it allows people to paint the picture in their head all the better.
Exactly. And that's what I love about these kinds of stories, is because I have a picture in my head, and I would love for you to have the picture, and that we can share in this narrative that is, I kind of feel like the sound effects or the background are, I hate to say that they're another character. At the very least, it provides a background in which the characters can shine more. And so a lot of the work I do is that pre-work, and I just take the script and I work through every episode, and I go through my own kind of database now of sound effects, see if the ones that I have work. So I've got footsteps I've used any number of times, I've got explosions I've used any number of times, and then write in the script, okay, here's where I want the big explosion, here's where I want this small explosion, here's where I'm having 3 explosions with a scream at the end of it, here's where I have a riot background. And then I will sit down and do the actual audio editing. Now, the interesting thing that happened with this one that hasn't happened with other ones in the past is because of the way that there's this relationship between I have this back room and I have the bar, and we move from the bar to the back room. I actually created each of those sections in individual pieces. So every time Nadir is in the front room, that's a scene part 1. Then if there's a back room scene, that's scene part 2. If there's anything else, that's part 3. And all of those have the sound effects that are related to that scene and that scene alone. So the one that I most recently did, for example, is where Aranti comes and, becomes all godlike and does his thing. So in his scene, the ice blast, that sound effect, him appearing, him, dying, all of those sounds existed in that audio clip, along with all the voices. So I did all the voices and the sound effects for that. But the actual background noise of the riot in the background and the explosions in the bar and the music and what happened with all of that, I layered that in afterwards, because we had this weird thing where we have these kind of discrete elements where I needed continuity, but I also needed to edit down the sound to say, oh yeah, you're really far away now. And that's really hard to do if I have different clips, and it was too unmanageable to do in one giant thing. Yeah, don't know if that's sufficiently interesting, and I'll keep that in the final cut, but...
No, people should know how much work
goes
goes into it. I mean, that's like, when you watch a movie nowadays and you see all the credits, it's like, what do you think people are doing? Well, so guys, there is going to be a season 2.
We think so. Yeah, we're sort of looking at 2019 at this point and trying to figure out what is the best time for each story. For the rest of the year, though, we're kind of going on hiatus now. One of the reasons we wanted to do this is to sort of give you a little insight into our process, but also kind of to give you a little behind the scenes of what's going on. So we actually got hired. We got a paying gig. I'm not really going to talk about exactly what it is, not because of NDA, just because it's far off. So I don't want to overhype before that happens. But we basically are hired to do this really cool job, and so that's going to take up a lot of our time. So we're going to sort of focus on that for now. But we're not done with Monday Matinee by any means, and we're also not done for the year. We have at least 2 more episodes coming out before the end of the year that we have scheduled already. And we will be returning to the seaside city of Massalia for that. So they will be returning to Swashbuckling for another holiday special, and then there'll be another sort of one-off thing we're gonna do. And we're hoping to do some more, but it kind of depends on how the rest of this big project goes. And then we'll be coming back in 2019. Living Large will be a brand new story at the top of the year, and then probably Swashbuckling season 3, and then I'm not sure what's next after that. That'll be into the spring, so maybe that's where Battleaxes season 2 would go, maybe right in there, but somewhere around there. So I'd say probably look for that in the spring.
Awesome.
I like this plan.
I like getting back into my orc skin. No, she's not is she an orc?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's my universe, so you can call it whatever you want. But I think I'd refer to her as an orc in the script. That's kind of the way I thought it, and that's how the Mayan Viking, our artist, interpreted her as well.
Talented.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is Eric Thornbeck. For those who don't know, he does all the original art for Stray Cat Theater.
That's right. You put us in touch with him when we were looking for an artist.
Yes, and he's like truly one of the best human beings on the planet. So
Yeah, we had a great relationship with him too, so I'm hoping we can do some more stuff
That's
with
fine.
him in the future.
Yeah.
So, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, I know that it's the busy season. It's fall. Everybody's back to school. The
Yep.
kids are back to school. So,
Yeah. And thank you for taking on the job of wrangling us. The problem isn't getting us to talk; it's getting
Right.
us to shut up.
I know in my head, I'm sitting there going, once this is done, I have like 4 questions for Kyle. All right, gentlemen. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We do appreciate it. We hope to see you again soon for
Mhm.
another Monday matinee.